Hey, today I'm talking about the Spy Kids Trilogy, and spoilers, it's pretty dang great. First up is Spy Kids. This is a 2001 action and adventure spy thriller film, and it's great. It's so good. The basic premise is these two spies, played by Antonio Banderas and Carla Gugino. They're from opposing countries, but they end up falling in love and want to start a family, so they retire and start a family. But they train their kids to be spies, and then one day they decide to go on another mission again. But unfortunately, they get kidnapped. So now it's up to the children to save the day. And it's really good. Like, I'm definitely biased. I've seen this movie before, and I remember liking it a lot as a kid, because I'm roughly the same age as the actors. But it's so much fun. What this movie does so well is that it takes everything seriously. Like, yeah, this movie's filled with lots of jokes, and there's lots of silliness to it, and weirdness and whatnot, but it takes the world seriously, it takes the threat seriously, and it delivers serious responses to those threats. It establishes rules of the world and stays within them. The perfect word to describe at least the first two movies is that it's very earnest. That, like, yeah, it's little kids doing all these like James Bond-esque things, and technically that is a joke, but it has the kids like being competent and they're actually doing it. And on top of that, they make the kids very three-dimensional here, but there's also really great chemistry between both of the kids, which you would hope so because they're the leads of the film. But then with Antonio and Carla, you can feel the sexual tension between them, which also just adds to the funness of it. Because like that stuff's gonna go over kids' head, and it adds like a nice fun layer for the adults watching the film. Feels like you can feel the love between the parents, which is really important. Also, the bad guys are really great. It's got Tony Shalhoub, who's awesome, and Alan Cummings also in this, and he's wonderful. And just like, yeah, they're doing all these silly, ridiculous, out there things, but it feels like a very grounded, real, true story, and that's the brilliance of it. It's such a really good film that I, without a doubt, totally recommend. I love this movie, and it's a blast. I think if you are an adult, though, you do need to put on your kid movie goggles, but it's a kid movie that you can enjoy as an adult. Like, it's so much fun, it's so smart, so clever, so interesting, and just fun. Just pure, unadulterated fun. Ugh, so good. Next up is Spy Kids 2, Island of Lost Dreams. This movie is perfect. I am surprised with how high I ranked this movie, but it 100% deserves its incredibly high ranking because they nailed everything with this movie from top to bottom. It is perfection. There is no better word. It is just perfect. So, I'm just going to be praising this movie a lot. I want to start though by talking about how with so many, especially Hollywood movies, but just kind of stories in general, when they make a sequel to a surprise hit story, the sequel is more or less just a remake of the first movie. They do roughly the same plot, maybe things mixed around a little bit. They have the characters regress on their arcs, so they're more or less the same person they were at the beginning of the first movie. And if it's not the exact same plot, there's a lot of the same beats and a lot of the same jokes that they did in the first movie. They just don't know what to do with it, so they just did the same thing. They did none of that here. I'm so impressed with it. So like, to go off of the character arc thing, so not only do our characters not regress, they actually progress from the endpoint of the last film to now in a very logical way, because a little bit of a spoiler, at the end of the first film, the Spy Kids are successful spies and now they're gonna be spies. Well, it's been a year of them being spies, so obviously they've increased in skills. They're still kids and they have kid problems, but they are much more competent spies now. And the film shifts focus to, it's pretty much just the kids on their own. It's definitely them as a duo, Carmen and Junie, but they have such great chemistry together and they've really grown that it feels like this is the right choice to do, and they feel like they've grown a lot, but they still have room to grow, and they made such great new dynamics too. Like, I loved that they gave them two rival spy kids to kind of compete against, and they were competent. They were definitely competent, which is really great. It wasn't just like, oh, you're stupid or stuff like that, we're just outsmarted you. It was more just like doing sneaky spy stuff. Like, they were trying to out-clever each other in a sense. And a lot of the conflict too comes from like realistic things that kids would have issues with, like seeing faults in your parents. That's great. That's so good. There's so much else to love about this movie too. Like, I loved it shifted genres too. Whereas the first one was definitely more of a spy film, this one's kind of more of a monster film, just like to spoil stuff. There's like big beasts that are on this island. So it's kind of like a classic Kong story, or there's very clear references to Jason and the Argonauts. And that's great. Those are wonderful references. And it's so much fun. It's a different kind of adventure film from the first film. It's really a love letter to this entire other genre, which I crazy loved. They really just completely shook it up, and that was the right choice to do. Like, not only did they not make a remake of the first one, they just went in a completely other direction that made logical sense, and it's brilliant. Oh my god. I had such a big smile on my face the entire movie. Like, it's just so good. They nail everything. So yes, without a doubt, I would totally recommend this movie. You could actually watch this movie without having watched the first one. I would still recommend the first one though, because it is really good, but you can just go into this one blind if you want to. And then just as a quick aside, fun little background story is that for my 12th birthday, I wanted to go see Too Fast, Too Furious in theaters because my friend and I were obsessed with the first Fast and Furious movie. Mostly him, but it rubbed off on me. But that was a PG-13 movie and I was only 12. And my mom was like, no, you're only 12. You can't watch PG-13 movies. So instead we watched Spy Kids 2, The Island of Lost Dreams. 21 years later, that was the correct choice. Without a doubt, my mom forced us into the correct choice. I remember us walking out of the theater being like, that was really good. And yeah, Charlie 21 years later agrees that movie was really good. And lastly is Spy Kids 3D Game Over. I'm not 100% certain if I saw this in theaters. I remember the ads for it. Now, going into this one, I assumed there was going to be a dip in quality. Like, it's the third one. They've done these year after year. They're probably running out of steam, running out of ideas. This is probably going to go down. And it did. It did go down in quality. But it went down in quality in unexpected ways. So the basic premise with this one is, it starts off as a noir film, which I really liked. But Carmen is kind of estranged from Junie, but it turns out that she's not just being like a teenage girl doing her own boy stuff. It's actually, she has been stuck in a video game, and so now he has to go into the video game to rescue her. The premise is not bad. It's an okay premise. It's a fine premise. Starting the film as noir was really fun. Going into the video game world was interesting. The graphics are very dated, but there is a certain charm to them. I think there's really two-ish things that are the main reason this movie dipped in quality. The first one is the game in and of itself, because the game is very vague. It's just kind of like a computer world thing. They're supposed to get to level 5, but it's not established what a level is. Like, is it a region? Is it you have to go through a door? There are doors they do go through later, but not always going through doors. And then, like, what do you do on a level? Like, there's a race section. Is that a level in and of itself, or is that just part of a level? What's going on with that? How do you progress through this system? Or like, what are the rules of this world in general? Like, they talk about like, you hurt hard enough then you lose life, but they don't really define what getting hit is or getting hurt is. Sometimes it's like a little tap that'll lose a life, or sometimes it's a really big thing and then you lose a life. But really they treat lives like hit points, because you can suddenly lose like a lot if it's a really big hit. So that's a thing. A perfect example of like them not establishing the rules is with, there's a cameo that's really great that I loved a lot. I won't say who it is, but they suddenly appeared near the end of the film, and it's clear that what the joke is going to be, that like they show up to be a big hero and then they're going to immediately die. And that's what happens. They show up, walk through a door, suddenly they die. Well, after they suddenly die, the kids then run in behind them, basically stand right where that person was, and they don't die. So why did he die? What caused him to die? It was a joke, yes, but there was no logic behind the joke. It's frustrating because the other movies were really good about setting rules and boundaries and following the logic of it. So I think what they needed to fix this is just more time to just kind of clearly establish, what type of game is this? What is this world? What are they going for? They use little bits of different things in a way that just doesn't quite work. It is interesting, but there's no rhyme or reason to it. The second thing is, it feels like there's a lot of heart that's missing. So Carmen isn't in a lot of this movie. It's really just Junie that it focuses on. And I get it, the actor's getting older. She's not really a kid anymore. She's getting up there in teen years. They want to focus on the kid. But they had such a great dynamic between them that as soon as she came on screen, which was about 15 minutes into the movie just elevated instantly. And it's like, that's what you were missing. You were missing this great chemistry between these two really good characters. But I can understand wanting the youngest character to be the lead. That's fine. It does feel like a natural progression for this. But I think also too, something that I really praise this series for is that besides this film, they did a really good job of being a mixed cast in the sense of it's not just men and the women aren't just love interests. There are lots of different women and girls doing lots of different things, and that's great. I really, really like that. Except for this film. They do some stuff, like Salma Hayek's in here, and I like that a lot, even though she's not in this movie a ton. And they do introduce this gamer girl who's okay. But the way that Robert Rodriguez writes, he really needed a girl partner for Juni, for him to really bounce off of. And like, yeah, he does have the gamer girl for a bit, but it's not quite enough. So what I think they should have done, if they didn't want to have Carmen in the film as much, is they should have taken the spy kid girl from the second movie, who was really good, and have her partner up with Juni, and both of them go into the game together, or she's already in the game, something like that, where it's them partnering up together, because he really needed someone like her to bounce off of. Another thing that I think would have helped too is there's like a trio of beta testers that are in the game, which I do like that idea, that's interesting, but they're all boys. And I think what would have been smart is to have the really tough boy, who's always like a big tough persona, have him be a girl, because that just like logically makes sense because of how incredibly toxic the gaming environment is towards women. And so it would make sense for a little like 12-year-old girl to have a very tough persona, because it's a very male toxic environment. So she needs to be a big tough girl to get through this. So that just adds even more layers to her personality and would make her a more rounded character. Also, Juni doesn't have an arc in this. He's very one-dimensional in this. Also, the grandpa's in here and he's kind of the only character that has an arc or a story, and it just doesn't work. I mean, it's okay, it's fine. It's just kind of more of an afterthought. Also, there's so much green screen of downtown Austin. Like, they use the exact same shot of the Texas Capitol building so many times. It's really silly. Also, Sylvester Stallone is in here and he seems like he's having fun, which is, yeah, he's fine. So yeah, I still liked this movie. I still enjoyed myself. It was such a clear step down in quality, especially after like the incredible high that 2 was. That this was just, it was okay. So would I recommend it? I mean, like, if you enjoyed the other 2, yeah, you don't have to watch it, but if you want to complete out the trilogy, yeah, go for it. It does have some fun callbacks and stuff. It's just not as good. It's good, it's just not. The other 2 were so good. It had the stuff for it. I think they just needed more time in development, then they could have made something just as special as the other 2. That's really the main issue. Alrighty, now for today's rankings, I'm going to go in order. So first up is Spy Kids, sitting at number 27 in the early like section. And then after that is Spy Kids 2, The Island of Lost Dreams, sitting at number 9 in the really like section. I friggin' love this movie. That's higher than Casablanca. I may be ridiculous, but this movie is truly amazing. And then bringing up the rear is Spy Kids 3D Game Over, sitting at number 97 in the liked section. And this is out of a total of 141 old movies so far this year. That's right, Spy Kids 2 is sitting at number 9 out of a total of 141 movies. It's that good, I promise you. I can't hype this movie up enough. It's so good. Like, look at this amazing line by Steve Buscemi. This is such an iconic scene and it's so well done. I'm gonna end with this clip because it's just perfect.
Do you think God stays in heaven because he too lives in fear of what he's created? Here on earth,